There's a lot of interest on social media about identification of predators, but also holding victims responsible for toxic behavior. I've talked about this a lot. If you follow me at any level, you know this is something that's very close to my heart, something I'm very passionate about. There's a lot of us like to put the responsibility for getting into a toxic relationship on victims. And I think it's a way because we want to stay safe. So we think that if we could become better at identifying dangerous people, then we will then stay safe. And on top of it, it makes us not like those who've been injured. We want to create distance from ourselves from those who get hurt. I certainly understand that. I have a sense of not wanting to be, I don't want to identify with that group either. I have now owned my identity as part of that group. And in fact, if you've noticed, I don't refer to myself as a survivor, although I certainly am a survivor, but I tend to more often refer to myself as a victim. Why do I do that? Because I feel that it's really important that we understand that the world's not safe, that there are people who not accidentally, but purposefully seek out others to injure. So back to this book called The Game by Neil Strauss. Now I know, if I remember correctly, I think Neil has come out to change his perspective and said that he wants to distance himself from the book that he wrote. And it's interesting because he writes it as a memoir. So it's really kind of his experience of being an insecure, sexless guy who then gets into this underculture of manipulative, exploitive men who have grudges, and they have a sense of entitlement, that they feel their lack of experience, physical experience, is sort of an entitled thing, and they begin to pursue how to have more of these relationships. So he finds several mentors in the book who then begin to teach him. These are men who've acquired a skill to pick up women, and he begins to mentor them. And in this process, he teaches you, as you read it, what he's learning. You learn with him what he's learning, and it's fascinating because it's fascinating in a morbid, scary way. What he shares with you. So let me share a couple things that I'm just in the beginning. I'm in probably the first third of the book. And one of the things that they share is that, and what's really powerful to me about this is that they're using I think it's NLP. I'm not for sure if I'm using the initials right. It's this neuralistic programming. They're using neuralistic programming as a way to bypass a person's consciousness in order to hypnotically control them. The name of the book, again, is called The Game by Neil Strauss. It's based on a person's real story, NLP. Yes, they're using NLP to bypass your consciousness, your conscious control, to make you highly suggestible. Which, again, like I started, we want to put a lot of responsibility on victims for getting to toxic relationships, which, if you notice my latest content the last 2 days, I've been talking about, are we actually codependent? Are we really vulnerable people who don't have lots of good boundaries? What kind of errors are we making? So one of the things they do, and I think this is fascinating, because if I think back, and I would love you to think back too, if I think back to the toxic people that I've met, toxic men that I've met, they did this to me. It's called negging, Negging, negging. So watch for this. One of the things they do is, if they're going to target you, and especially if you're the prettiest person in the group, if they're going to target you, what they will do is they will say a negative comment wrapped in a compliment. I'll tell you how it was used with me, but I also will give you some examples out of the book. One of the examples is, a guy came up to a woman and said, "Oh, you have such an overbite. It reminds me of Bugs Bunny, but it's so cute on your face. It really adds to your complexion and your look. It's so cute with you." Another way that they might do that is they would come in and say, "You have such a beautiful smile, but right here, you got something right here." They'll do something that will be sweet, but they're also at the same time pointing out a defect. How it happened to me, I had experienced it twice. And both times it was regarding the use of a photo. So with my ex, I was showing him my childhood photos, and for some reason, I happened to have a photo of, it's probably during the most vulnerable time in my life. I'd gotten chubby just before I had this big spurt of growth. My hair was cut in this really awkward, funny cut, ugly cut. I was wearing wrong clothes, I obviously was growing and I needed clothes to fit better. It was kind of too tight. And I wasn't heavy. I was just, chubby, kind of pudgy. And I have a sweet expression on my face, but it's a dorky expression, really dorky. And I'm with my sisters and we're feeding the goats or feeding the sheep. And I'm kind of grinning up at the camera. And for some reason, I don't know why I happen to have it, because I really don't like it. It's an ugly photo. He saw it, my ex saw it and said, "Oh, that's the cutest photo of you I've ever seen. I need a copy. I need a copy of that photo." And then I thought, well, okay, it's sort of stupid, but why would I not give him a copy of it? So I sent him a digital copy of it. And periodically he would pull this out and say, he'd make me look at it. "Look at this photo. I think you're so cute here." And yet inside I'm just feeling like I'm dying, because I remember that stage of life, that stage of my adolescence, how awkward I felt, how I wasn't fitting in, how I wasn't, to me, it was like this whole host of feelings, but he liked to pull it out in order to remind me of a time where I was very vulnerable. Here's another example that he did to me too, that it's interesting, because now that I'm thinking about negging, I'm realizing that where it is. So this is what I want you to be thinking about. I want you to be thinking about when you have been someone who's used it with you, because what it does is that it creates I'll talk about how it impacts you psychologically. I'm going to wait on that. So the other example he gave me was, we would go out to try on clothes, and we were living in a culture where I'm 5'7", so I'm taller than probably 95% of all the women in this culture. And on top of it, I'm just a large woman. I always have been. I have, like, my ring finger is size 9. I wear size 10 shoes. I wear men's gloves. I'm a big woman. And so for me to go shopping, it's really difficult. It's hard to find any clothes that would fit. But he would want to take me shopping, and he'd pick out the ugliest one, which I knew didn't work with my figure. It was a bad match with me. And then he would say out loud in front of this whole store, he would say, "My mom always said that I was never one to go for Barbie dolls." And I would hear this, and of course I would want to die, because first of all, it said publicly. And yeah, Barbie, by the way, is not unrealistic. You can't, no one has a Barbie figure. She's an impossible example. I mean, they've actually tried to look at what she would look like as an adult, as a human woman. She's an impossible thing. But he would say this multiple times, and if I ever reacted, he'd say, "I don't know why you take that so personal. I'm not being negative. You should feel." I'm like, it's not a compliment. It's not a compliment. Be about like me saying to a man, "For a man with a small dick, you sure do well with it." I mean, who wants to hear that? It's just bad. It's just bad. I would never get nasty back, but I'd want to. So why do people do this? What's the purpose? When you're meeting a predator, why would they say this to you? What's the purpose of it? So watch for this, by the way. So if you meet somebody and they do this strategy, there's a purpose to it. Well, the purpose is to increase your sense of sensitivity and make you feel thrown off. So now you're not in your A game. You're now feeling shaky and insecure. And then it creates a desire in you to prove this person wrong, to show up in some way to overcome what you now see in their eyes is a defect about you. So now you're more invested in seeking their approval. So watch for that, because it's done for this. They're doing this for the reason to get this from you. They want to throw you into this position so that now that you're more receptive. And interestingly enough, what's so frightening about this book, The Game, is how successful they are, how they're looking for tests and signs of your receptivity, and then they begin to get your phone number. And it's just so why am I talking about this here? Because when we meet narcissistic or predatory people, predatory men. I want to talk about men right now. I'm not saying women don't do this. They do it, but they do different things. They have different strategies. But men have a certain types of men have reasons for putting us in positions to make us vulnerable and suggestible and susceptible to their charm. And charm, by the way, guys, it's interesting. I got so much flack for that short clip on, be careful about charm. In fact, it's one of my most popular videos. Charm, I'm using charm not as kindness or warmth or friendliness. I'm talking about an effort to manipulatively, I can't say that word today, manipulatively disarm you so that you fall more vulnerably under their sway and influence. It's a strategy that people who want to sell you something, whether it's to sell you a car or to sell you on themselves, they're doing this as a way to sway you in order to manipulate you. So be very, very careful about that. So whose fault is it? When victims become injured, should we put the responsibility on the predator or the offender or the abuser, however you want to label this person? Or should we look at ourselves and hold ourselves accountable? I'd love to throw that out there. Brittany's running polls on TikTok, so I'll have her run this as a poll. I would love to see how you feel about it when we put the onus of our abuse back on us. So what would be a more reasonable way for us to approach this so that we can get better at protecting ourselves, but that we also then don't end up feeling ashamed and that we don't participate in beating ourselves up over this. So thank you so much for joining me here today. I want to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Kerry McAvoy. I'm a licensed psychologist with over 20 years of experience of counseling. These days, I primarily educate about healthy relationships, abusive relationships, everything related to this in general. I see I have a lot of friends here today. And when friends show up, it's kind of intimidating. But I love that I've seen Lisa pop through and now Bree's pop through. While I have you here, those people here, are you guys coming to the Austin meetup? 9 creators are going to be here on Austin on this Saturday. We're going to have a VIP panel discussion from 1 to 2:30. You can get your tickets through the link in my bio. Then a public meet and greet from 3 to 6 where you can just come and hang out with us, get to know us, ask us questions, see us. I'm so excited. And then I'm going to be in Toronto for another meet and greet on November 19th. And that one, again, is going to at 1 to 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. We're going to do, again, a VIP panel talking about overcoming and finding hope and strength after narcissistic abuse. And then, again, we'll have a public meet and greet. I'm not for sure of the times. The times on that's a little iffy, but it's on November 19th. Again, you can get the tickets through my link in my bio. So I'm super, super excited. Right now, for the one for Toronto, we are putting together a journal. We're going to be giving a journal away as a gift for anybody that comes to the VIP panel. So we also will be giving a signature drink. So I'm super excited about the bonuses you'll get for coming to that one. And while I have you here, before we jump back into who's responsible for abuse, and we will jump back into that, please consider coming to the webinar this next week. It's October 20th, called Isn't Having Sex My Right? There's so much complexity to healthy sexual relationships, to how do we actually seek out each other? What is sex about? How do we when is it abuse? When it is not abuse? How do we figure out those lines? This would be a great place to talk about that. There's going to be a sexologist, me as a psychologist. We'll also have several coach advocates and a pastor, because if any of you who are in the religious community know, there's so many components about religion and sex and how women and men are to show up for each other. So I'm so excited about that. That's October 20th, called Isn't Having Sex My Right? And I have another webinar on November 10th with Sandra L. Brown, which fits right into this topic today. Sandra L. Brown is a researcher, social worker who has been, understanding predatory behavior for over 30 to 40 years. She has done massive research studies on the typical profile of a victim. And she also talks a lot about how to protect ourselves, what kinds of things to watch out for. She's worked with these men, by the way. She's actually worked with psychopaths is one of the populations she's worked with. She wrote a book, How to Spot a Dangerous Man Before You Get Involved. She also has written Women Who Love Psychopaths, so some excellent stuff. She's November 10th. It's going to be an amazing night. So if any of this topic today about predatory behavior and safety and how to protect ourselves better. She also talks about the typical profile of a victim and blows away a lot of what we assume as common sense wisdom. She'll tell you they're myths. She actually found that they're myths. She's been looking at what actually is the profile of a victim and then teaches us how to become better at protecting ourselves from toxicity. So I can't wait for November 10th. Thanks, guys. I'm actually dark haired. You see my eyebrows. That's my real color of my hair. But for those of you who read my book, Love You More, The Harrowing Tales of Lies, Sex Addiction, Double Cross, knows that I suffer severely from alopecia. And I had a massive hair shed after my third baby. So these days I wear wigs. And just a few years ago, I thought, well, actually, one of the ways that my ex tried to neg me was around my hair and around my loss of my hair. So at this point, I thought, you know what? I'm just embracing the fact that I wear wigs. Why not let you all know that I do this? And so I decided to try blonde. This is called a light blonde, and the brand is Envy, is the company, and I love it. It's not very expensive. You would be shocked that it's not a $500 wig. I think it's like $100 and something wig. So if you're interested in any of this and you want to know more, DM me. I'd be happy to tell you where to get wigs that are very good priced. I use a shop in Michigan that I buy my stuff from. So yeah, and I'm really crazy about this brand. Envy is a great brand. Yeah, and who knew I could wear blonde? I didn't know I could wear blonde. So hey, thank you so much. I like the pixie cut a lot, the short cut, but my sons love the longer hair. So back to predatory behavior. And there are a few rules to the room. I know I have mods here today, and they're taking care of this room very well, and I appreciate it a lot. And that is, don't talk about my appearance now that we got that out of the way, as well as we don't talk about politics and we don't talk about religion. Not because those things aren't great things to talk about, but just because this is a mental health space, and I want to keep it safe for this. So I appreciate that. And thank you for following me and sharing this, because in both worlds, Instagram as well as TikTok, liking this as well as sharing this and becoming a follower is all the metrics that really help me out. So thank you. You're blessing me when you do that. I really, really appreciate it. So when it comes back to predatory behavior and who's to blame, where should we put the responsibility? What are your thoughts about that? I would love to, do you, if you've been victimized by a male or a woman or a man, whether you're a man who's gotten into a relationship with a woman, or you're a woman who's gotten into a relationship with a man, or maybe you're LGBTQ plus and you've gotten into a relationship with somebody and they were hurtful to you, do you feel like we should put the responsibility on the victim, on us, or should we be considered that we should be looking at as should be looking at the person who did this? I would love to know. I'm sure on TikTok, Brittany's going to ask that as a question. I'd like to hear what you have to say about it. And yeah, 100% on the abuser. I agree too. I do think that we have an accountability to become better at identifying predatory behavior, but sometimes it's hard. The one that I posted today, I actually have been having a conversation with the creator, Coach M, about her video, what she did is, okay, so let me back up for those of you who don't know, because I know Instagram doesn't know it all. There is a creator on probably she's on Instagram too. I wouldn't know why she wouldn't be, but she's on TikTok. Her handle's called Please Message Me. She's Coach M. Wonderful content. She's hard hitting. And she really wants all of us to be more accountable. I love that she's willing to sort of cut through the crap to challenge us. Well, there's been a song that's going around that's kind of a sad song, and women are coming on and sharing their really horrific stories, like shockingly horrific stories. One of them apparently had been shot in the belly to kill the baby. Like mouth-dropping, awful stories. And she came on and said, listen, I'm moved by your stories. I'm like stunned by the horrific things people have survived. But and this is what she said, it hit me hard in a good way, but also in a hard way. She said, People don't do these catastrophically awful things out of nowhere. There's early signs that you overlooked. I mean, she's talking to the victim, that you overlooked, and you didn't realize that you were putting yourself into danger by not calling them out faster. So it isn't like they just went from 0 to 100. They incrementally went up from 0 to 100, and you missed the change. You missed where it was becoming increasingly dangerous. I came back with a rebuttal. Today I posted a rebuttal and said, and I really like your point, Sly. I agree with you. I want to say more about that. But I came back and said, there are people who actually enter a relationship with the purpose of deception, and the entire thing is a con. And that happened to me. And not always are there clear signs. Some of the signs are no more difficult than you would see with a lot of people. They're doing no more worse things. I gave an example of, in my case, mine was critical. He'd kind of be a bit of a know-it-all. But honestly, how many of us have been in a relationship with somebody who is a bit of a know-it-all? And do you see that as such a toxic thing, and that it could possibly be suggest such danger that you would limit your contact with that person? Now, the me that I am today, I wouldn't want to be in a relationship with somebody who's critical. I really wouldn't. And I wouldn't probably let that person super close to me. But at the time when I met this person, I've had 50 some years of my life being taught to keep myself small, easygoing, compliant, and I had been around lots of critical people. So it wasn't certainly new behavior. And most of the critical people in my life always were well-meaning for the most part. They wanted good things for me. They weren't like trying to harm me. So for me, I didn't realize that this person actually had a second double life. My ex was living a secret life, completely separate secret life, and that it would impact me, would be a very bad impact on me. So that was what I challenged her on, is for us to put it out there that put the responsibility on everybody, that the escalation is a failure of ours to spot it as escalation, as even risk, that we need to take ownership for that. So I'd love to know what you think about this. I kind of sit on the fence. I mean, I don't want us not to pick up symptoms and signs of dangerousness, but I also think it's unfair for us to have the full weight of the responsibility sit on us as if it's our fault. That's, to me, really hard. To me, that then takes the light off on where it really belongs, is that in a perfect world, we wouldn't have dangerous people. These people wouldn't exist. And then we wouldn't need to be doing this at all. I mean, if you think about it, do you really want your children to have to learn how to lose their innocence and to become savvy in a cruel world? I wish I wouldn't have to teach my kids that. I don't want to teach my kids that. That's, to me, I raised 3 boys. It was really hard for me to say to them, you cannot go to the bathroom in McDonald's by yourself. You're not allowed to do that. It was very difficult for me to make sure they always had to buddy up, and then teach them the difference between safe touch and not safe touch, and to tell them that not every person they meet is a good person or has their best intention. I don't like destroying that sense of safety, but in order to keep them safe, I had to teach them that to keep them safe. So for us then to turn around and look at each other and say, and it's your fault too, to me, it's a sad statement that we say to women. It's mostly women. It's not that it doesn't happen to men. I know I have men here, right here today, even, who have had this happen to them, but it's very hard for us to look at men and women and say, well, you let them boss you around a little too much, and when they put you down in public, and when they eye rolled, and when they kind of didn't take responsibility when they talked about their ex, you missed all of that, so this is now your fault because of this. So yeah, find that very, very uncomfortable. So again, I hope you come to the webinar on November 10th so we can talk more about this, because these are really, to me, very, very important issues. I think these are very, very important issues. So I know I've pretty much eaten up 30 minutes today here talking about this. So I'm going to now turn it over to you guys to see what kind of questions you have for me. And put your thumbs up ahead of it so that I know that you're talking to me, not talking to each other or just commenting on here. So if you have a question for me today, please put a thumbs up. I'd be happy to take it. I'm watching both Instagram as well as TikTok. And thank you so much both for you guys joining me today. I'm very, very excited to hang out with you. And for those who don't know who I am, I'm Dr. Kerry McAvoy, a licensed psychologist with over 20 years of counseling experience. Someone just asked, do I offer counseling today? No, I don't counsel these days. I closed my practice in 2015, but I do offer a clarity call, a one-time clarity call. So if you're looking for some direction, you'd like to have some answers, maybe you just want to hear my opinion, maybe you'd like to know what resources that you might not know about that I know about, maybe you want me to diagnose you, maybe you're like, am I a narcissist, or I think this happened. Do you think this happened? If those are the kinds of things that you're really curious about, I'd be happy to meet with you on a one-time call. Again, you can see that a link in my bio. So the questions are starting to come in. My narcissist is a charming, very friendly, nice, but he always cheats. Will this ever end? No, it will never end, Mia. That's a fast, quick answer to this. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you how it fits with narcissism. And then that way it will make more sense of why I quickly said, no, it won't end. Because narcissism is a disorder. It's a personality hardwiring of where a person feels that they are the exception to the rule, that they're extra special. So they agree that there's rules to the world, and you certainly better follow them. If you cheated on your partner, they're going to be enraged with you for that, probably punish you horribly, and they will never forget it forever. So be aware, these people tend to be grudge holders on it. But in their minds, life's been unfair, and they deserve the best of everything, and they deserve what they want when they want it. And there's this chronic restlessness inside, this boredom inside. And as a result of that, they're always looking for excitement and something that sort of like tells them that they're special and that they're all that. And cheating is a really great way to do that. Now, I don't believe that all narcissists cheat. I know narcissists who haven't, so I know exceptions to the rule. But a lot of them do. It is something that you need to really be aware of and be conscious of, that this is a problem, that this is a risk. And it's because of the both reasons. They're bored and restless. They need constant admiration and attention. It's a fast way to do that. It's a very easy way to get that kind of attention supply. And because they really feel the rules don't apply to them. So they don't see you as a person. To them, you augment their life. You're like a really great computer in their life. So they don't see you as having feelings, and that it's something that's harming the relationship. They're excessively self-focused. So Mia, that's why I came out and just said, no, I don't think it will ever stop. Here's the other reason. This is the way for you to know whether or not your partner is serious about getting better. Here's some things to watch out for. If somebody does something that is truly, they're broken about it, they have a lot of remorse, regret, and they're hitting rock bottom about it, they will then take responsibility for it on their own. They will go out and on their own initiative get treatment. They will then do everything they need to do on their own to increase safety and reduce the risk of this happening. And there will be a sense of brokenness for you in the way it's injured the relationship with you. There will be an incredible level of accountability. There'll be no resentment for your hardship, for the pain it's caused you. There will be create space for that and feel it's understandable and justifiable. And if you don't see that, you don't have someone who's truly sorry for what they did. Yeah. And chances are, I bet you're not seeing it. That's probably the sad part. So On My Pause says, how do you handle narcissists questioning other diagnosis? Can you say more what you mean? Like what diagnosis are they questioning? Or are they wanting to know? Because by the way, narcissism does not exclude other diagnoses. They could have ADHD. They might be autistic. They could be depressed or anxious. These things they can even have other personality disorders. Personality disorders is not like a lock and key thing. It doesn't like just because you have the one, it locks out all the other ones. It doesn't. So it's possible that they could be a narcissist and antisocial personality disorder, or a narcissist and an obsessive compulsive personality disorder, or they could be a narcissist and have OCD. So it doesn't preclude other conditions for sure. What signs do you look for? And I'm wondering what signs are you referring to? Signs that you've met a narcissist, or what signs that you're in danger? Blessed Girls 5, can you say more? What kinds of signs you're looking for? I'd be happy to talk about that. Oh, I'd be curious to know, eRob 910, what you can't believe you didn't see this, and then you're saying, wow, you can't believe you didn't see what? Yeah, and Mora BC 223. No, I know that there are people who don't cheat. Absolutely. I know narcissists who've never cheated. They certainly are narcissistic. They have a lot of other presentations. This is the thing. And hey, Lindsay, so good to see you. Here's the thing about cheating and narcissism. If narcissism and if cheating was such a great indicator that you've met a narcissist, it would be in the DSM-5. Why would we not have the DSM-5? Because we would like, oh, great. Hey, that's a good test. Okay, every time you see that, yep, we know we got that. But it's not. So it's not in the DSM-5 because it's not 100%. So you can't use it as a test for narcissism. Yeah, Ethel Real to thinking that NPD and sociopathy should be declared a public health crisis. I agree. I think those are very, very concerning. And it's interesting that why we're not more alarmed and why there's not better research in this area. And I have my suspicion why. I'd love to know why you think why. But if you think about it, what are they most attracted to? Power and control. Well, who makes the laws across and who runs the world? They do. So they set policy. Why would they set policy that would harm them? They're not going to set policies that would harm them. Absolutely not. So it's to be continued over on Instagram. Why do they tell on themselves? Well, a narcissist will tell that they're being manipulative or word scramble, and then when you identify it and present it to them. This is a fascinating topic. I'm so glad you brought this up. They do tell on themselves. They do. So please be aware of it. The person that I met who's a pickup artist said he read the book Pickup Artist and he was a pickup artist for a period of time. And then he said he put it behind him and he wasn't doing that anymore. Well, he was. He was still being a pickup artist. My ex, when I met him, told me he didn't need anybody. He was good all on his own and he could meet all his needs successfully. And he was meeting all of his needs successfully. He told on me too. He told me that this is a person who's going to really actually have an intimate relationship with me. So why do they do that? Because it's such a fascinating thing, I think one is that their lifestyle creates stress. The deception and exploitation is creating a measure of uncomfortableness for them, and it's putting unconscious pressure. So it's unconscious. I would call unconscious leakage. So you're seeing this confession as a way for them to dispel the stress of their own toxicity to themselves. So there's one reason why. I think another reason why they tell on themselves is because they're braggarts. They love to tell. They think they're all that and more. And so to them, it's like bragging rights. Like, oh, I'm really good at this, or I've done this. So I think part of it is they just can't resist letting you know how wonderful they think they are and how above everything they think they are. And I think sometimes it's a way to maybe even create distance with you, to like with mine saying, I don't really need anybody. I think for him, it was a way for him to warn that don't look for closeness from me. I'm not going to be a very warm and emotionally cuddly person. So it's sort of a way to sort of set the rules around intimacy. A lot of us do that. This is something, by the way, this is just a comment on people in general. When you're on a dating app or you meet somebody new on a date, often they'll make a statement about their degree of intimacy and take that seriously. They mean that literally. So if they say, well, I'm never going to get married or I never want kids or something, they're telling you a fact that's probably it's a fixed, immutable fact about them. So be warned on that. Yeah, Bria, I do agree that they may not cheat sexually, but they certainly cheat everywhere else. I think most of us, though, when we use the word cheating, we're referring to affairs. I don't think we tend to think about all the ways in which, but you're right, they do cheat every way possible, for sure. Yeah, speaking of that, if those of you who are trapped in a relationship and you're really looking to break the confusion, You don't know what's real or not real, and you don't even know how to get out. You're just like that mental like agony gridlock. I just launched a course called First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist, and the early reviews coming in fact, Brittany just finished it, is that people are really saying it's very useful, very helpful, very therapeutic. So, not that I'm saying you shouldn't see a counselor, but it could be part of that process of experience of looking at the material. So I highly recommend that. It's called, again, First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist. So the online course as well as a workbook. Great questions, by the way. Thank you so much. I'm going to back up because I just jumped forward by 50 some. Yeah, thank you, Brittany. Yeah, I have a book. My book, somebody had asked it earlier, and I didn't go back and really slow down. But I wrote a memoir about my experience, about what happened to me. It's very vulnerable, very vulnerable. I don't hide anything about how I get duped and taken advantage of and get caught in a narcissistic abusive relationship. And this just is a few years ago. So here I have all this practical experience as a psychologist, and yet it happens to me, and it can happen to a lot of us. Don Hennessy, in his book, How He Gets Into Her Head, says, don't ever think that you're above this happening to you. If it hasn't, you've been lucky. You have not met a skilled enough offender. The person I met has been in hundreds to thousands of relationships prior to me. He is a very skilled offender. Very skilled. I hope you never meet him. Blessed Girl 5, when you are in a relationship, do you know that it's definitely a narcissist, or are all narcissists dangerous? Not all narcissists are dangerous in the sense that they're going to break the law or take your life or steal from you, things like that. But I would say that all narcissists are exploitive and manipulative. And they're deceptive, but not always aware that they're being deceptive. They're deceiving themselves. So they may exaggerate or omit things or put things in a light that puts them into a greater light. They'll do things on purpose to sort of make them look good at your expense. So in that sense, yes, it's emotionally dangerous for all of us. That's why I often have narcissists come on here, these platforms, and they come into my comments and say, you're demonizing us and you're stigmatizing us. And here's the thing I want to emphasize. If you go out and you read the DSM-5, the 9 criteria, you can't be diagnosed with a narcissistic personality disorder and not be a toxic person. You can't, because they describe toxicity like this is a person who practiced deception, exploitation, and manipulation. That's part of their criteria for diagnosis. They say this is a person who's filled with envy. How is a person, do you want to live around a person who's an envious, jealous person, who's always in competition with you, seeing you as part of the threat? It also says these are people who have low or little empathy. Well, that means they're not sensitive to you. They're going to show up for you. How is that an emotionally safe person? That's not emotional safety, to have someone who's low in empathy. So that's when someone says, well, we need space to be accepted as we are. I'm saying, yeah, you guys go, you get a compound, you go hang out together, you live together, you tolerate each other's behaviors. That's just fine. But the rest of us don't really want to. It's harmful. It's psychologically harmful. And the research coming out on narcissistic abuse is suggesting that narcissistic abuse is one of the worst forms of abuse. One of the worst forms of abuse. It's worse than physical abuse. It's as bad. And by the way, you're talking to a survivor of catastrophic sexual assault. Catastrophic, horrific levels, insane levels I survived. So I have a comparison. It's as bad as that, guys. Lines right up. It is bad as that. It broke my heart. It devastated me. It gutted me. It laid me out. I felt destroyed. In the same way I felt destroyed when I was being assaulted, I felt destroyed by this. So it is in my personal experience. I say it's terrible. It's terrible. Well, it's literally a tearing down of a person in order for them to be consumed for the benefit of another person. There is nothing good about this. So how do you know that you've met someone? It's hard because when you meet them, they're imitating you. You meet yourself. So one of the signs that you've met somebody dangerous is for you to recognize that you've met somebody that seems too good to be true. because it probably is. That isn't realistic. You should meet a separate person with separate identity, separate interests. Yeah, there's some crossovers with you, maybe same values with you, but you shouldn't feel like you've met somebody who checks every single box. And I remember in my head mentally checking all the boxes. This guy did that. Watch also for the person who just sort of seems charming and bigger than life and super interesting. And same for women. Watch for women who just really meet your needs and shows up in a way that just feels like above and beyond, like impossibly, like everything that you ever dreamed of in a woman. Watch for those types of things. Those are some signs to watch out for. And then watch for somebody who doesn't take responsibility. Now, this is a hard one. You're going to have to like read between the lines, but ask them questions like, ask about challenges in their life and conflict or when things go wrong. I know I don't want people right off the bat wanting to hear about my ex history or my past, relationships. I think that's probably not first date material, but listen to how they talk about things going wrong in their life and where they put the responsibility and accountability. If they're never the one who's to blame and they have no insight to the degree that they contribute and they don't seem pretty broken about it, but they seem like it always happens to them, like they're the victim of it, you have not met a mature, they may not be toxic, but you certainly didn't meet a mature person. You didn't meet a mature person, because mature people will say to you, hey, I didn't know to look for this and I should have. And boy, I'm being a lot better at it about now. Or, the way I really handled that in confliction, I was an ass. I was, way too hot. I didn't slow down. I didn't take them, listen for them taking responsibility. Also, look for the reciprocity level in the relationship. It should be balanced. There should be a matched level of investment in you and you invested in them. And if there is this funny showing up and disappearing, that's very manipulative. They're using what's called intermittent reinforcement schedule of reward. That is the most addictive style of reinforcement possible, and it's what Las Vegas uses at its slot machines and it uses it in a lot of locations. It's where you get a reward at a random rate of interval and a random rate of a payoff. So how it shows up in your book is they'll have this great moment with you. It's really wonderful. And then you can't reach them for hours or days and they don't know where they've gone. And then when you do approach them about it, they act like, what's your problem? You're being really controlling, and they make it about you. So if you see this kind of funny in and outness, it's not consistently present, you've met somebody who's probably being manipulative. So be careful about that. So those are just off the top of my head, some things to watch out for. But fantastic question. Thank you for asking that. Here's the other thing, and this is what It's to Be Continued said on Instagram. Narcissists often will say things that they know you want to hear, and then later on they'll gaslight you and said, no, I really didn't want that. I just, and by then they wait until they do have you kind of committed and in a fixed position to where it's not easy to leave before they start to let the reality of who they are show up. And usually it's kind of a slow process. You'll see glimpses of their real self and it comes more and more. But when you challenge them about that, then they'll go back to love bombing you and denying it and breadcrumbing you so that you're confused. You stay confused. They're very good at keeping you off kilter and feeling unbalanced. Christy says, my narcissist husband has paranoia. It's sort of a form of a depression, and who knows what else. Do I help or run? Well, Christy, I'm not living your life, so I feel very hesitant to tell you what to do. That's something you're going to want to listen to yourself about. But I can give you some things to consider as you're trying to weigh this out. And by the way, I strongly recommend that you would be the perfect candidate for my course called it's called First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist. There's also a workbook that's sold on Amazon as well digitally on my website. It will help you slow down and ask the right questions to sort this out, because your confusion is called cognitive dissonance. What you're experiencing is a dual reality of who is this person? Are they good or bad? Is this a relationship worth saving or not saving? So I hear you're in a stage 2 level of a cognitive dissonance struggle. It doesn't sound like you've hit stage 3, which is agonizing. Not to say the first 2 stages aren't bad, but the third one is when you say, what's wrong with me that I can't leave? There's something wrong with me. So there's 3 sets. We talk about this in the online courses. We talk about it as well as in the workbook. So, but those are the kinds of things you want to be considering. So what happens here? So cognitive dissonance is a dual reality. literally a dual reality, and you've split yourself as well to match each dual reality. You live with a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and you have a person who shows up within you who knows how to handle the Dr. Jekyll. You're all happy when the good guy comes out. But you also have a part of yourself you've learned how to cope with the Mr. Hyde to keep it from getting worse. So you've split yourself, your reality has become split, and you're no longer sure which is real. You're no longer sure which is true. And as a result, your mind likes simplicity. It likes clear answers. And because it can't find clear answers, it sits and rotates in this nonstop cycle, gridlock. And that's why you can't make a decision to get out. So I would really, like I said, really recommend that course. It's perfect. It's perfect for what you're struggling with. Cindy over on Instagram wants to know, aren't we describing codependency? Cindy, you've missed my video on TikTok because it's not been posted on Instagram where I take that directly on. This is not codependency. What Christy is struggling with is not codependency. Codependency was created out of the 1934 in response to AA. When AA appeared, they realized that not only is the alcoholic ill, but the family becomes ill in response to the alcoholic as a way to manage the alcoholism and manage the addiction. And they called them back then co-alcoholics. No, don't be apologetic. You didn't know. So it really came out of the addiction model. What's happened is it's a fuzzy term with no clear mental health diagnosis, no criteria. We use it sort of willy-nilly to apply to lots of things. And interestingly enough, this is why I think the Sandra Brown webinar is so pivotal. She actually looked at this question because the assumption had been for years that everybody who gets into a toxic relationship is codependent. It was just sort of mainstay. That's why you think that. It's because it's been spoken so many times as truth. But you know what? No one had researched it until 2014 when Sandra Brown, which is the upcoming webinar on November 10th, which is why I'm so excited about it, slowed down to say, is this true? Are these individuals have traumatic childhoods? Did they come from dysfunctional homes? Are they people-pleasing people? And interestingly enough, she found out it was not true. She found out that 63% of us don't have any of those criteria at all. So it's fascinating. So I highly recommend that you come to that to learn more about that so you can understand what the root of this is, where it came from. She describes it historically, where this idea of codependency came from. It's fascinating. It's very fascinating. But it is kind of seen as mainstream belief system, but that's why I've been trying to educate on it, because it's not actually accurate. So we're coming up on, it's 2:00. I'm going to take 2 more questions before I wrap it up today. Thank you so much, you guys. This has been super, super busy. Before I take those questions, a couple housekeeping things. That's what happens when I'm trying to read 2 platforms and stay on top of this. I won't be going live on Thursday. I won't, because of the Austin meetup on Saturday. The creators are starting to fly in on, they're flying in. I live in Austin, so it's here in my hometown. They're flying in and I'm starting to help and get ready for it. So I'll be tied up getting busy, getting ready for the Austin meetup. So I really hope to see you. I can't wait. I can't wait to see you. So I won't be here on Thursday. I'll be back on Tuesday. We may have some stuff live going on over the weekend, along with me and all these other creators. That includes like Lindsay Goodman, who has just popped by on Instagram, Lisa Sunny, who just popped by on TikTok, Lee Hammock, Ben Taylor, Catherine Gleiss with Stand Coaching, also How to Love a Battered Woman, Nia Renee, Trey, I was like you, Trey, will be there. A whole group of us are going to be here. So first of all, I'm meeting a lot of them for the first time. I'm super excited about that. But we may be doing some things as well. And yeah, Cindy has a great idea. We will be taping it, and we'll talk about how to post the tape of the VIP panel discussion. So I'll make sure that happens. I'll set up the right cameras for that. So if you can't be here, and the same with the Toronto one on November 19th, we'll be taping that one as well. And we're creating a journal for that one, guys, and I'm so excited about it. It's called How to Have Hope and Strength to Overcome Narcissistic Abuse. And inside of it, the creators give our personal pieces of advice, our own pieces of advice about how we overcome it, and then it'll be available for sale. We're going to have that on Amazon, but we're also giving it away to anybody who comes to the Toronto VIP panel discussion. So let me take the last 2 questions and wrap it up today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thank you for liking and following, and all of that is I really deeply appreciate it. And thank you for liking and sharing this. It's great. So I'm looking for questions right now. And any last questions you want to ask me? And I'm trying to, right now there's been just a lot of talking. Oh, thank you so much, Cindy Gal, to Texas. I'm in Texas. Whereabouts in Texas are you? I'm in Austin. So yeah. And guys, I know a lot of you asked to come live with me. I don't accept spontaneous requests to go live with me unless you talk to me ahead of time. And then I would be happy to consider it, but it's not something I spontaneously do just because it's stressful and I don't know where it's going to go. And also it turns into a therapy appointment, and people don't like watching other people's therapy. It's not very interesting. So, I appreciate, McKinney. I do know McKinney. Yeah. In fact, I think, isn't there a big, Mexican, this weekend, there's a big, huge Mexican kind of, celebration of Day of the Dead at McKinney this weekend. I've seen the ads for it. This looks gorgeous. It looks very, very beautiful. Yeah. So any last the name of my book, Catherine White, is Love You More, The Harrowing Tales of Lies, Sex Addiction, and Double Cross. If you put in my name, Kerry McAvoy, PhD, you'll find all my work. I actually wrote 3 devotionals. Then I have the memoir called Love You More. And then the latest one is a workbook called First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist. Can I elaborate on the golden child? Zane wants to know over on Instagram. So let me take this as the last question and then we'll wrap it up here. Oh, New Mexico, that's where you are. So the golden child is one of the many positions that happens in a dysfunctional family. There's the golden child, the parentified child, the lost child, the comedian. Sometimes there's the princess. You might also see the scapegoat. Those are common roles that happen in dysfunctional families. Well, why? Why do we have these roles in the family? Well, what happens is when you have parents who aren't very mature, especially emotionally mature, they can't handle the full emotional range of the children and see children really as fully separate people with hopes, likes, dreams of their own. So what they do is they relegate them into roles, partly as a way to manage the anger or manage stress or all that kinds of stuff. But it's also partly they relegate them into roles just because they don't really see kids as people and they see kids more like property. And as a result, you get kind of like limited to these roles and expected to perform to them. Interestingly enough, they're often fluid. So just because you're a golden child most of the time doesn't mean that if you don't do something really bad that you can't get scapegoated briefly. Or if you're the lost child, it doesn't mean you can't sometimes move into the golden child position. In other words, they're flexible. They're not like rigid. It kind of depends on what's happening in the family. But it's a way for families to deal with its lack of strength, resources, and ability to handle tough stuff. It's very common. There's 2 types of families out there. There's the enmeshed family, and then there's the disengaged family. And most of us, it's like a continuum. So view enmeshed on one end and disengaged all the way on the other end. What does that all mean? So it's how families deal. Think of families like a system, like a complex system. Like your body's made up of many parts and organs. It's a complex system. Families are also an organism. They're a complex set of systems. So on the enmeshed end, when it's stressed, everybody clumps together and they sort of have one way of thinking, group thinking. They expect everybody to kind of come in line and merge and to be on the same page. And the boundaries between people is very blurry, very poor and fluid. On the other end, the disengaged family, they scatter. So when they're under stress, they move apart, they avoid, they're more anxious with each other. And they're more likely to kind of go in their own spaces and handle it alone. They don't know how to come together well and utilize each other well. Neither style is healthy. Both styles not good. You want to know how to handle stress as an individual, but also functionally as an organism or as a group, as a system. So having these kind of rigid ways of relating to when there's difficulty isn't good for either end. But families like that often have their children take on roles very commonly. And by the way, those roles aren't only for the kids. It also applies to the adult. Like another role is called the identified patient. That's sort of also often the scapegoat. And that can be like mom or dad. They could become the identified patient or the scapegoat. So it doesn't necessarily just limited to children. Any of these people, most of the roles can also apply to adults. Hey, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. This has really, really been wonderful, and I will be back on Tuesday. Normally, I'm on here Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I can't wait to see you guys then. Be sure to check out the link in my bio with all the stuff that I've got going on. I'd love to see you there. Also, check out my podcast. By the way, if you're listening to my podcast, let me know what you think of it. Tell me what you've listened to lately and what you liked about it. I'd love to hear, and what you'd like to hear more of. Let me know. I'm serious. I'd really like to hear from you about that. It's called Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse. Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse. So thank you so much again for hanging out with me today.